Hello and welcome to the Miles Irvin Show. I'm your host, Miles, and this is episode 5 of the Over Under series. This is a series where I take a look at every team's projected win totals for the upcoming NBA season, and I determine if I think they're going to win more games or less games. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the Southeast Division, our final division of the Eastern Conference. Before we get into it, like I've been saying in the beginning of all these videos, if you would like, definitely leave a comment with your opinions of these over-unders and even maybe your win predictions for these 5 teams. It's definitely been fun reading the certain comments. And I just want to say also before we get started, thank you all so much for the support. Um, with getting back into things even before, training camp has gotten back underway. I know that it's been pretty inconsistent, when it was the Miles and Goggles show. But I'm very confident that this go around, I've got a full schedule planned up and a full lineup of content to bring to you guys for, at least 2, 3 days a week. And when the season ramps up, maybe even more than that. So I'm just super excited to get into the season. And I just wanted to say thank you all so much for the support. But with all that said, let's get into the Southeast Division. Like I said, the final division of the Eastern Conference. So here are the 5 teams. We have got the Hawks, the Hornets, the Heat, the Magic, and the Wizards. And as you see from all those win totals, it isn't the best division. Um, really, I mean, you only have 2 teams going above 500 as projected here, and one of them, it's 41.5 wins. So, it isn't the best division, but there definitely are some gems down here that could make for some good storylines and surprises heading into the season, especially regarding with these projected win totals. So let's get started. First up, let's talk about the Charlotte Hornets. Let's talk about the Hornets. We'll skip around a little bit here. The Hornets are a team that definitely embraced rebuilding and tanking last year with the injury to LaMelo Ball, well, the nagging injuries and him really not playing, and of course the whole Miles Bridges thing, him being suspended and not playing for them at all last year, and then just not being a good team, when you look at all the other teams in the Eastern Conference. So they go into this offseason, they had the number 2 overall pick, and they drafted Brandon Miller, who struggled a little bit to begin Summer League, but had some solid games near the end of it. And then they went out and Miles Bridges signed his qualifying offer to stay with the Hornets. There were some rumors that he was going to potentially end up in a different team. But no, he's staying with the Hornets on the qualifying offer. And PJ Washington is also staying with the Hornets. Now, this is something that I feel like is kind of awkward for this team. I, I'm sure I'm not the only one that thought PJ Washington would be in a different jersey heading into next year. I don't think that anyone saw PJ Washington was going to stay a Charlotte Hornet, especially when you look at the rest of their roster and the depth with the forwards at least. When you look at, of course, Brandon Miller, they're going to want to play him. Miles Bridges, 2 years ago, the last season that he played, he was the Hornets' leading scorer on a play-in team. PJ Washington saw it, and they still have Gordon Hayward on that roster. Now, Gordon Hayward on the last year of his deal, I'm very confident that he'll get bought out mid-season, if not the beginning of the season, because he should not be on that team, man. He definitely deserves to be on a team where he has a chance to, compete for something, even if it's in a lesser role. Because like right now, I mean, when you look at it, just because he's played for Charlotte, especially this past year, people don't really know much more about Gordon Hayward, but he's been pretty good for the Hornets the last couple of years. Um, if he could get to a team where he could showcase those skills, some teams could definitely use, that small forward presence. I think that it would make sense for him to get bought out, especially with his insane contract that he's still on. He'll probably get bought out mid-season, maybe even beforehand. Just because, I mean, his minutes are going to be so limited when you look at all the guys that I just named. Even like James Bouknight could play some small forward. They're going to want to mix and match with their lineups. Now, despite them having, all this talent still, I haven't even mentioned really LaMelo Ball or Terry Rozier yet. Um, when you look at the Eastern Conference, I think that this is still a team that's near the bottom. of the East, just because I just don't think that they are ready to be winning games yet. I just don't think that they should be doing that. I think they should still be focusing on development and trading away the veterans that they still have. Because like even Terry Rozier is another guy that they could definitely look to move because a lot of teams could use that scoring. So because of all that, I'm going under on the Hornets for 30 and a half wins. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but 30 and a half wins for the Charlotte Hornets. I'm going under. I think they're still going to be in the bottom of the East just because, like, I don't know, man. They're not going to be able to compete for much until they can defend. And even when they were in playing contention, they really couldn't defend anything. So I'm picking under on the Hornets just because, I mean, as I've mentioned in all these videos, the East has gotten so much better. There's so much parity, and some teams are going to still have to lose games. And I think the Hornets will be one of those teams. Now, as far as the Atlanta Hawks go, the Hawks are at 41 and a half wins. And last year was a bit of a weird year for them. With the acquisition of DeJounte Murray, people expected a lot more out of the Hawks than they ended up actually producing. They were in the play-in tournament. They put up a little bit of a fight against Boston and around the end of that series, but I just that was a disappointing year to me for the Atlanta Hawks. And this offseason, they traded away John Collins, who has been on the trade block for so long. I feel like he's been on the trade block for at least 2 to 3 seasons, and he's finally gone. He goes to Utah. Atlanta didn't really get anything back in return, which I think is okay. I think that having one less guy that you feel like you need to give him the ball, whether it's a post up or a corner three, I think that that could make things better for them this year, especially if you replace that with a Sadiq Bey or maybe even a Jalen Johnson. However, new head coach Quinn Snyder is feeling about that. Quinn Snyder took over midway through last year, and we all know Quinn Snyder is a really good regular season head coach, as we saw him with the Utah Jazz. To me, 41 and a half wins. This is one of the easiest overs that I could be asked to pick this year. I think that the Hawks are going to be a really good team in the East this year. Offensively, they have the potential to have some of the best ball movement, isolation, and pick and roll action in the league. When you look at Trae Young, I feel people forget how good Trae Young is. Dude's averaging like 26 and 11 assists. I mean, the guy is just an incredible point guard. The last couple of years, they just haven't been too successful in the regular season, so people probably rank him a little bit lower because of that. But if there was a team to make a huge jump this year, I would bet on the Atlanta Hawks. I think that they have a real shot to make some noise this year, and not just the Eastern Conference, but the whole league. I think that their offense could be they could have a really potent offense, and, they have a pretty deep team as well when you look at their bench with Bogdanovich has been a very good piece for them the last few years. AJ Griffin had a good rookie year last year. Whether it's Jalen Johnson or Sadiq Bey coming off the bench, that's very solid for Atlanta. And then Onyeka Okongwu is one of the best backup centers in the league. I mean, there were reports coming out that that the Hawks were looking to trade Clint Capella because Okongwu is just such a good player at his young age, and he does deserve to get some more minutes. I think that they have the potential to jump up into one of the top tiers of the Eastern Conferences because of the depth of their team. Now, of course, Patty Mills as your backup point guard, I don't know how much he can give you at this stage of his career. I mean, just 2 years ago with Brooklyn, he was really good, had a career year, but we'll see how he is, in this type of role. I mean, I think he'll play well with Trae Young, offensively. Now, defensively, those two better not see the court together because, oh my gosh, teams are just going to go right at them. But DeJounte and Patty Mills, they've played together in San Antonio. So, the Hawks with this offseason, and I think the John Collins move was an addition by subtraction, as I talked about before. But I think because of that, and just because now the Hawks have another year under their belt with DeJounte Murray in there, I think that they're poised to take a big jump. And if they don't, I'm not going to be happy, and I'm going to be very disappointed in them because this team, with their offense and Quinn Snyder as their head coach, should take a big jump, and I'm going to predict them to do that. But even if they don't, I mean, 41.5 wins for this team, I mean, that's ridiculous. This isn't over. You know what? Speaking of subtractions, let's talk about the Washington Wizards. Coming up next, the Wizards are at 24.5 wins, and we all know this offseason they finally decided to blow it up, and thank the heavens that they finally did it, and they're finally going to embrace the tank. This is an under for me. They better be one of the worst teams in the East, because this is always a team with, Beal and Kuzma and Porzingis there the last year and a half. Even when Westbrook was there, they would always be one of the teams that was in that mid category for me, along with the Bulls and the Raptors from last year. You know, just not good enough to really do anything, even make a playoff spot, even a play-in spot. They didn't do that the last couple of years, but they still weren't bad enough to really get a high draft pick. That's why they really don't have many young players that they can really try to showcase with this team. When you look at their young lottery picks that they really can showcase, it's Denny Avdia, it's Corey Kispert, and it's Johnny Davis. Those three are the young lottery picks that the Wizards have had over the last 3 years that are really going to be showcased on this team, because there's going to be a lot of playing time, because the Wizards should be bad. Now, Kuzma did re-sign with the Wizards to an extension. I know I talked about this when he signed there. He won't be a Wizard for much of that contract, I don't think. Getting Jordan Poole in exchange for, basically Bradley Beal, I think is great. I think Jordan Poole is going to put up some high scoring numbers as the number one option there in Washington, or 1A, 1B, whatever you want to do with him and Kuzma. Tyus Jones, if he starts or DeLon Wright starts, they're two pretty similar players as far as very solid role players. But then you look at this team, man. They also have some veterans that they acquired in these trades that I think should either get traded or bought out so that they have a chance to compete, like Tyus Jones, who I just mentioned. I think Daniel Gafford, if he isn't in the Wizards' plans moving forward, I think that he could help a team maybe in a backup role, even though he is still a pretty young player. DeLon Wright, like I mentioned, Landry Shamet was traded there from Phoenix in the Bradley Beal trade. From the Porzingis trade, you got back Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari. Gallinari did not play last year with Boston due to ACL injury, so if he could play well, if he gets the opportunity, there's definitely a world where a team sees Gallinari, at least playing well shooting wise, because that's always something that Gallinari can do, especially over the last, 4 or 5 seasons. A contending team could look to add that to their bench. And Mike Muscala, same thing. I mean, he's basically in the same situation he was just in with Oklahoma City, and he ended up in Boston last year. So I think that there will be a lot of those candidates on the Wizards. But the Wizards should be bad, and I think the Wizards fans should embrace that, because they haven't, Wizards fans might always talk about how, oh, they're so bad, but they have not been bad enough to get a lottery pick. So now that they are bad, I think that they will be bad and go under the 24.5 wins, because they just need a piece, that a super young piece that they can start to build around, besides, the guys I mentioned, and even their draft pick this year, Bilal Coulibaly. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but, he'll get his chances as well, but he seems like a pretty raw project type player. So, the Wizards definitely on the under to be one of the worst, if not the worst team in the Eastern Conference or the whole league. Now let's go to the Orlando Magic. The Magic are at 36.5 wins. And if you remember from last year, this is a team that I predicted was going to make the play-in tournament last year, because I am such a fan of this Magic team. And I think that they are ready to make that leap to legitimately contend for the play-in tournament. I won't say that they are going to make it. I won't say that they're a play-in lock, because that's ridiculous. But, like I mentioned last year, they do not have a reason to intentionally lose games. They have so much young talent and versatility at really all five positions that I think that it could take them a very long way. When you look at the starting five of they'll probably go with Markelle Fultz, who had a finally healthy year and was pretty good in those minutes. Had a very efficient year for the Magic last year. Jalen Suggs is good. Of course, Franz Wagner, and this is going to be his third year. He could definitely make that third year jump. I'm sure that there are many guys from that class that are candidates to do that, and he's definitely one of them. Paolo Banchero, oh my goodness. He definitely has the potential to make his first All-Star team this year because he put up All-Star type numbers last year. I mean, besides the 1 month where he shot completely brutal from downtown, he had a really good rookie season. And then Wendell Carter Jr. is a terrific starting center in this league. I think defensively inside they've got it, and even their bench as well. You got Cole Anthony, Caleb Houston is a shooter heading into his second year. They signed a veteran with Joe Ingles that could give him some solid minutes. John Isaac is finally healthy. We can finally go into a season and he's going to be healthy, so that's going to be good. And Mo Wagner as well. It could be a solid backup center as well. And then they still have some young guys that they can develop. Like you look at Jet Howard and Anthony Black, who they just drafted this year. It's not going to be easy for them to get minutes when you look at all the guys I just talked about. I think that this is a pretty deep team, and they're so versatile. If you want defense, you can throw out Markelle Fultz and Joe Ingles, Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter all out there at the same time. And you can defend while still having some solid offense as well, because all those guys can at least shoot it a little bit. I think that this Magic team is very solid, and 36.5 wins. I've got them on the over. Again, I am a Magic. I mean, besides the Cavs, the Magic might be my second favorite team. I just like this. I like this team, man. I don't know what it is. I think it honestly reminds me a lot of the Cavs before they really jumped up into the play-in contention or whatever. But I'm a fan of the Magic, so I've got them on the over. But there is definitely a world where they aren't this good, and but I will say if they lose games this year, it's not going to be because of them tanking or anything like that. It's going to be because you know they're still a young team and they're still learning and growing. And sometimes even if you don't end up using like your draft prospects to if you don't develop them and they don't get as many minutes, I think more years with this core under their belt could really make a difference. Because, I mean, finally everyone's healthy. Like Markelle Fultz being healthy, year two of Paolo Banchero. I mean, I already mentioned it all. I think that just the longer this team has to play together and learn from each other, I think the better off that they'll be. Now, last but not least, we have the surprising defending Eastern Conference champion, Miami Heat. They made the finals as the 8th seed, and they are at 48.5 wins. Now, of course, I mean, full disclosure, I've saved this video and the next division video for last because of the whole Damian Lillard thing. I have a feeling that there's going to be some type of recording jinx where as soon as I upload these videos that Damian Lillard is going to get traded to the Miami Heat, because that just seems to happen. That just seems to happen. But, recently there have been reports about Damian Lillard or other teams being interested in Damian Lillard, like the Toronto Raptors, Chicago Bulls, Milwaukee Bucks. So I think I'm a little bit safer to make this video. So these predictions, this is going to be based off of, this team without Damian Lillard on the roster, because we also do not know what this team is going to look like. We don't know what they're going to trade. I mean, obviously, you would think Tyler Hero is going to be in the deal, Nikola Jovic, bunch of draft picks, but that's really all you know. So we basically just have to wait and see what Portland gets back for Damian Lillard to whichever team he goes. But getting to the Miami Heat, they got worse from last year's NBA Finals team. They lost their starting backcourt with Gabe Vincent and Max Strus both heading to their next teams and getting the bag. They definitely got worse. Now, of course, Max Strus starting. Tyler Hero was injured for essentially that whole playoff run besides the first half of game one of the first game, against Milwaukee. And, you'd have Kyle Lowry stepping into that starting point guard role. I don't know if, he thrived with being a backup point guard in the playoffs last year. And I think that that's a better role for him. And I could definitely see a world where Tyler Hero starts at the PG and like Josh Richardson, who re-signed with Miami after a bunch of years of being away. I think that maybe he could go back to the two. We could see if Josh Richardson really has anything. If being back in Miami and Eric Spoelstra in that system where he started and thrived, if that can really do something. I definitely could see a world where that happens. Um, but Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, Bam Adebayo being your three, your front court, I think that that's very solid there. But then your bench, I mean, there's still a bunch of question marks. Of course, Caleb Martin had his moments in the playoffs, Duncan Robinson as well. But then your other two for sure's, that's even a question mark. Like Thomas Bryant and Haywood Highsmith, they're both probably third string guys on a super good team. So we'll see how they perform. We'll see if a trade does occur with Miami, if whether it's Damian Lillard or maybe it's Buddy Hield or just another other random guy that's out on the market. But just for right now, because they got worse and because Miami really didn't care about the regular season last year and they still made it to the finals, I have to expect that they would go a little bit under, but I could totally see a world where they go over. Just because, I mean, this team, I mean, they were just in the NBA Finals, and the two guys that they lost, they're role players at the end of the day, with Gabe Vincent and Max Drew. So I think that Miami is still going to be fine, but they definitely, I think that a trade for Damian Lillard obviously puts them on the over. Damian Lillard is one of the best players, of this generation, one of the best shooters we've ever seen. So I think that Miami's going to go on the under if they don't end up making a trade for Damian Lillard. But of course, if they end up making a big move that makes them significantly better, they're going to be on the over. But that is it for the Southeast Division. Like I said at the beginning of the video, leave your comments with whatever opinions you may have on these teams. And, man, we've only got one division left with these over-unders. And then before you know it, training camp and the preseason is underway. And, man, I am so excited. We can get into the nitty-gritty about, like, award predictions. I might have some guests come on here and do some stuff with me as well. Some super exciting stuff coming up, man. Definitely, if you've enjoyed these first 5 episodes, I would definitely recommend you to subscribe for more content because more is going to be coming on the way very shortly. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. That would definitely be appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. My name is Miles, and I'll catch you in the next one.